Hey there everyone, patch 2.1 is out for Splatoon 3 and you've probably heard all about it already for PvP and such, but it's also time to discuss all the changes in the patch that affected Salmon Run, as there's quite a few of them around. Overall, it's not a bad patch for Salmon Run, but I still feel it's a bit lackluster since there isn't really anything that's specifically targeting Salmon Run itself, nor have they addressed or mentioned any of the major issues like lag in the patch notes, and I just feel most of these changes are PvP centric that just happen to also affect Salmon Run. But either way, you just gotta be happy about what we got. Most of these changes are still being tested, but we have a fairly good idea what changed so far, and I'll go through in the same order as everything is in the patch notes and try to showcase everything that's different. First, the weapon changes. The Aerospray has already been one of the best inking weapons in the game, but the patch increased its inking by 10% buff, so it got even better and it's definitely noticeable in-game. The buff specifically affects your falling ink and not your shot, so make sure to shoot in a straight line to see the changes. Next bigger change is to the Splatter Shot Nova, one of the new shooter weapons added in the season, and this one is pretty significant even in Salmon Run, as it got a 19% inking buff, which while it does not increase its damage that a lot of players dislike about the weapon, the buff to its painting is quite a lot and will increase your mobility and chances of survival quite a bit in Salmon Run. Just be careful as this buff only applies to your ink shots and not the ink that falls on the ground while shooting. Next weapon that got changed is the Dynamo Roller. They changed its damage rate reduction caused by distance. You can now cause 50 damage or 100 damage with PvP numbers from further away than before. It's quite a big change honestly, even in Salmon Run, though the Dynamo Roller isn't really a weapon you want to fling around a lot in this game mode, considering how slow it is and its main strength comes mostly from rolling. Buffing its flings is still quite significant and it will be very useful for instances like shooting a steelhead bomb with your vertical fling. The Big Swig Roller has also been changed in PvP, as they say they changed the minimum horizontal damage from 30 to 35, but sadly this change does not seem to have affected Salmon Run at all, and there's no change in the Big Swig's damage currently. Overall, the Big Swig isn't terrible, but I would have loved to see some adjustments made to it for Salmon Run, as it's definitely my least favorite roller and I don't feel it has its niche like they wanted it to have, similarly as in PvP. So personally, I would like to see some changes made to this weapon in the future, maybe in the next season. The Nautilus got a firing duration change. After the patch, its firing duration has been increased by about 15%, so basically they increased the time you are shooting while your Splitling is charged by 8 frames at first charge and 16 frames at full charge. This is definitely very noticeable in Salmon Run, and it's a great change to the weapon as it increases its DPS a bit. So you'll notice doing better, especially in bursting down certain boss salmonids like a steelhead. And since the Nautilus can also recharge its shots during firing, this is a welcome change and might make me like the weapon even more, but we will have to test it in action for more feedback. Finally, for the weapons section, none of the ink efficiency changes to the weapons apply to Salmon Run, so both the Bamboozler and the Sloshing Machine remain the same, thankfully. The Sloshing Machine got great buffs overall in next wave, so I would have been a bit sad to see it nerfed back, but fortunately that's not the case, and the Bamboozler is overall in a good position, so I also don't feel it needs any changes. On to the next section, which is changes to specials, and there's been quite a few really, with the biggest change possibly coming to Reefslider for Salmon Run. They have increased the invulnerability window for Reefslider quite a bit after exploding, and this is a massive buff to Reefslider in Salmon Run at least. Thanks to Kenshiro-san for putting together this comparison, we can see that before the patch, the Reefslider would explode into a Salmon lid and just get splatted right after. Definitely a thing that happened to me a lot. And also if you arrive straight into a steel eel, you would also just get splatted. After the patch, that is no longer the case, and if you arrive under a Salmon lid, the invulnerability window will protect you and you will survive. Same way, if you end up in a steel eel after the explosion, the invulnerability will protect you and push you out before you would take damage. Overall, great change and very much needed for Reefslider. Next change was to the Ink Strike. The patch notes say that they increased the radius of the explosion by about 10%, and they also increased its damage by 50%. The radius change did affect Salmon Run, so it's slightly better, but considering that Ink Strike has already been changed before just for Salmon Run, the damage increase did not affect it this time around at all. It's already a pretty good special that can deal with multiple threats very easily and efficiently all around the stage. Crab Tank also got a nerf in PvP, and it's supposed to last 1 second less without the special power-up gear ability, but this change does not affect Salmon Run, and its duration remains the same around 9 seconds, so Crab Tank is unaffected in Salmon Run after the patch. I'm pretty happy this nerf didn't affect Salmon Run, as I feel the crab tank is already one of the specials that players struggle with to use properly, and the duration nerf would have just made it even worse overall, so I'm happy that they aren't applying everything. Wavebreaker received a few minor bug fixes, mostly to fix its issues, and as a result, if you place it in an elevated area, then the attack radius of the Wavebreaker is actually buffed and reaches further. So that's an overall nice buff that you can exploit if you use it correctly in Salmon Run by placing it in higher spots. Unfortunately, I didn't see anything about them addressing the healing bug concerning big shot cannonballs, nor have I heard anything about it, so I assume it's unchanged and it's still there. There's also a couple of bug fixes for Salmon Run, nothing too major, and sadly no plans so far in increasing the performance or addressing some of the greater lags that are happening, especially in executive VP ranks. First, sadly they're fixing the floating steelhead bomb bug. Before, there was a chance that if you defeated a steelhead, their bomb would remain in the air. This funny bug should be fixed in 2.1 now. A more significant change is for the flipper floppers, that if their circle would be submerged in water, it was pretty difficult to paint it before the patch, and now in 2.1 that should be no longer an issue. They have apparently also changed something on Marooner's base so that salmonids are causing less lag spikes on the map, which is really needed. As I mentioned, in higher EVP ranks the game gets really laggy, and you can just feel the game isn't working properly anymore, which is one of my biggest gripes about Splatoon 3 right now. There was also a bug fix for Big Run that if you got a communication error during the event, during the results being announced, then you wouldn't get your Big Run badge. Now if you apply the patch, you should have your Big Run badge now, so hopefully everyone who was unfortunate to receive this bug will have their Big Run badges from now on. Finally, there was a weird bug concerning Salmon Run scenarios, where if you save the scenario during a wildcard rotation, then the scenario could also give you a different Grisco weapon and not just the one that was available during the wildcard rotation. This bug has also been fixed in 2.1. But that is all for the 2.1 patch notes specifically for Salmon Run. As I said at the beginning, it's a pretty good patch with some nice changes, so I can't really complain much, but I still feel that most of these changes are just scraps that fell over from PvP, and none of them were intended specifically for Salmon Run. Apart from that, some important fixes were also not mentioned, such as adjustments to lag or the big shot cannon bug, so while the patch is great, there's still a lot more I'd like to see in the future. With that said, leave a comment below the video and tell us how you feel about the patch, and also if you noticed anything else being changed. It's always appreciated. If you're interested in more Salmon Run videos and guides, like and subscribe, it helps a lot and I really appreciate it. Now good luck with your future shifts and 2.1 coworkers, take care, and I'll see you the next time.